Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for seek power always, that power within you to do your bigger work in the world. I am so thrilled to introduce to you my special guest today and dear friend and colon hydrotherapist. I can't even say it. Let me say it again. My friend and colon hydrotherapist, Ciara Mumford, and she is a third-generation cleansing, fasting, and detoxification specialist. Get this, for over 16 years in the health and wellness, making her the youngest ever in her field. And we'll be talking about how her age has come into effect, right? In terms of how long she's been in the business, being taken seriously, standing in her power. This is going to be a powerful show to really look at, where are you at and people taking you seriously and doing your bigger work in the world. So Ciara, welcome to the show, sister.
Thank you. I'm so happy that I get to be part of your podcast. I love listening. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's just jump in here, talk about standing in your own power and distinguishing who you are. You come from a line, 3 generations of powerful women who are really, game changers in how people look at their health. Back in the day when your grandma started things, there wasn't as popular or known for people to do things like, colon hydrotherapy and, really stepping into that type of realm. How is it, one, that you decided to jump in the family business, for one, and 2, how do you distinguish yourself from your elder feminine power women?
Yeah, absolutely. I never really thought I would follow, I think, in their footsteps, but, there's something to be said about just this generational gift that people have. My grandmother, like you said, was an innovator in the industry. I mean, she's like the author of the first book ever written on internal cleansing. My mom is internationally acclaimed. She has the #1 school internationally. So stepping in those footsteps was amazing. So there's just so much education and information that was passed down to me for generations. And with all that knowledge comes the sense of you can do anything. You have all this information and this gift to give, and you need to be giving it. And I quickly learned that at a very young age, having all that information really meant nothing to people who looked at you and saw you as being so young. They would just think, if this person is this age, how could they possibly have any information or education, to really share with me? So I very quickly was like, wait, what do you mean you don't see me for all of what I've got going here? I have a lot to share with you and you need to listen up. So at first I definitely fought that quite a bit. And it set a precedent where I was more concerned about what people thought about me instead of what I thought about me. And that's, I think, where the spiral kind of begins, where you can kind of go left or you can go right. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, I realized, this age thing is an illusion. And I have to own my strength, my power, my knowledge. And once I do, people will see it, as opposed to me. I don't have to tell them. People can see it. So it was stepping into the power, stepping from behind the veil, I think, that allowed me to really feel most in my element.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and a lot of times people may think like, oh, they paved the way for you, which in a lot of ways they did. And you did
Absolutely.
work in their studios and their shops. But, what people may not know is that you've established your own business. Like you have your own location and you had to build your own clientele and, all the things people had to learn
Absolutely.
about the business. There's the skills and the knowledge behind it, but there's also that business savvy part that comes
Absolutely.
in as well. So for
you,
and
I was the sorry,
no, go ahead.
And I was the business person behind the business. They had the notoriety and I had the business skill. I opened all of our locations. I was the manager. I was the business aspect of it. So yeah, and then I built that on my own later as well.
Right, right. And that's what's so cool is that they have the name recognition, but a lot of times people didn't know that you were that person behind the scenes who were, learning all the things about business and marketing and getting it out there so that when you did branch out on your own, you had that foundational experience, not only in the field, but also in the business world as well. And,
Yeah.
which has me go into because, working for family, as we know, can be, very informative and overwhelming because you never turn it off. You said something about, business with meaning and purpose requires knowing your boundaries and worth. And I would
Yeah.
love for you to expand on that because sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times when you have your own business,
All the time.
boundaries are a huge, huge issue. Everyone thinks you're open 24/7. And then you add family business on top of it. It's the only discussion that's to be had. How did you really establish those boundaries and tie it to your worth and standing in your own power? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, that was definitely a journey for me because working in the healing industry, you kind of believe that if you're meant to heal, you're just supposed to give and give and give of yourself so that you can heal others. What I had to kind of settle with in myself is that if I truly was a gifted healer, then the only way I would ever be able to be truly serving others is if I was a vessel that was taken care of first. And I spent, good 15, probably, 10 to 15 years running on empty and giving as much of myself as I could. But if you're giving all of yourself and you don't have the proper boundaries, you're not refilling your vessel, then you have really very little to give. So I think that, again, acknowledging I am a powerful person, I am a gifted person, and I have something really important to share, and stepping into that power first allowed me to say to myself, if what I have is so important and is so valuable that people need it, then I have to make me a priority first. And that was groundbreaking for me because I didn't know that you could be a healer and also have this self-ishness that you needed. And I use the air quotes, but self-ish in the sense that you're replenishing what you need for yourself first so that you can give that back to other people.
Right.
So it took me a long time burning the candle at both ends before I realized that I wasn't serving anyone. I was depleted and other people weren't getting the full value of what I really was capable of. So that's when I started creating those boundaries, especially in business. Because if you're a healer and you're in business, then you feel like you're going 100%, 120%. So that's when I started creating boundaries with my family. When it came to business, if there's business advice and information that's needed, we schedule time for that. That has a value attached to it. There's an exchange that's happening there whether that be acknowledged or financially. And then the same with clients, being able to say this is our time with each other, and for me to give 110% in that time, that's our slot. So creating those boundaries as well. And then I also got to a point where I started firing people. If there became an issue where I felt like it wasn't serving of either of us anymore, then that relationship, whether it be client or friendship or business, that needed to part ways in a harmonious way, but it needs to go its own way because those are the boundaries. I can't be and do what I need to be and do for other people if there is going to be people who aren't going to value me. And then that's the interesting thing about value as well, is that if you don't value yourself, other people aren't going to value you. So it becomes a vicious cycle. So as soon as you start to value yourself, all of a sudden somebody who you thought was totally invalidating you in the past is now valuing you. It really all starts internally with yourself once you have that acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and, being that leader, stepping into that. And, for those of you who, really don't know the path that Ciara's been, I mean, she has done personalized programs and plans in health for over 20,000 people. So this is someone who has had times where she's run herself in the ground, right? That she is like overgiven on a lot of different ways. And, this is part of the journey along the way, and that experience of really putting those boundaries in place and really seeing how is it that I can serve, but in a way that if I need to stand for health, and this is something, you and I've talked about quite a bit about in the health industry, how many healers are ill, right? And how can you be a true healer if you are not taking care of yourself and you are not fully in your health? And
Absolutely.
it's an important conversation to have, is that if you are a healer and you are listening to this and you are not well, that is the first step for you to get into. And whether or not it's in your own modalities or you need to reach out to others that do that, it's something I have with another one of my wellness friends, Maria Whalen, about invincible wellness, about, you have to be able to heal yourself before you can heal other people. And I think that sometimes healers can forget that and not be in that as part of the path. Now, I know that some of, one of the things that kind of a pet peeve with you has been around, there's a lot of spiritual aspects and spiritual gifts that come through some of the work that you do, and the frustration around if there's not, a spiritual accreditation, if you will, around that. How have you been able to use a lot of your spiritual gifts in your work?
Yeah. So I'm highly intuitive. And then one of my spiritual gifts is just basically claircognizance, where you know things for the sake of just knowing things. Like you said, I mean, there's no training for that. It's something that I've had since I was a child. And honestly, I think that's part of the journey to empowerment that you were talking about too, because starting at a very young age, people would try to disempower you for your gift and be like, oh, you don't really know that. And then, hindsight's 20/20, and they're like, that's a little odd. But the damage is done sometimes at a young age when you're told you don't really know what you're talking about, when actually you're very gifted at knowing a lot of things.
Right.
So I did definitely deal with some disempowerment around that at a really young age. And then again, once I was willing to keep stepping into that and say, no, I think I know myself better than how others know me, I'm going to keep channeling that into my work. The more confident and comfortable and having ownership for me that I became, the more influential it was with my clients. So that's when it would start showing up in work, like kind of medical mediumship, I guess, in a way, knowing what's going on with people's bodies when they're looking for answers.
Right.
So it changed from what I was told was discernment into really me stepping into my gift, which was, you've always really known. You've just had to find validation for what you're knowing.
Right.
And now I don't look for the validation in what I'm knowing. I know what I know, and I share what needs to be shared, and that comes into stepping in your power and being willing to say it.
Right. This is such an important part of this conversation. And this is why I love doing this show, is that, sometimes we're looking outside of ourselves for that validation and that power, and that really all of that power is within ourselves. And there really is a distinction between knowledge. And of course, you've been trained, and I've been trained in things, and there's all of those, things that are part of that. But there is definitely another aspect of beyond the knowledge, of the knowing, right? And I think that's where particularly female leaders in particular, but men as well, where it's like, something, but because it's not necessarily tied to maybe logic or, whatever that is, but you just know what you know. And that's when I think people start second guessing themselves, or they kind of give their power away, or maybe they're having more challenges with their boundaries. But I think that having this conversation is just so helpful for people to just embrace what you know. Like when you know it, you feel it in your gut or your heart, or there's however you feel it in your body, to really step into that. And you can actually cultivate that, right? It's not like, Ciara and I are our own cloud by ourselves, right? These are things that we've cultivated because of our trust in ourselves and making that happen. So I think it's important to have these kind of conversations for people to cultivate that in themselves, to actually start trusting themselves in that. And I know that's why, people hire me to be their mentor or consultant, and same with you, where, we do need people to support us along these lines, because, sometimes left to our own devices, we don't see some of those things, or it's in our blind spot, or it's not there. So, I'd love to see, I know some of your secrets for impact around what we kind of talked about, the it factor, and maybe talking a little bit more about how you utilize that.
So one of the things I had to get over at a really kind of early, again, all these things are early ages because I started working so early, but was the fears around other people's judgment, the fears around, am I really capable? The fear around, if so many people have already done it before me, what happens if I fail? Am I like the ultimate failure? And I think that I really had to confront like fear head on, and I call it the F it factor, in the sense that it's like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, you really have to play that game with yourself, that literally, what is the worst that can happen? Because people, I see, 8 people a day for at least an hour to an hour and a half a session, and they're talking about all of their fears, and all these things they're like a jail, a prison of their mind, where they're thinking about all the worries that could be. And it's like, but what if they were, though? Like, what would happen? What's the worst case scenario for you if you were to lose your home, or this business weren't to work out, or that relationship weren't the relationship?
Right.
It's the effort factor.
Yeah.
If it's not meant to be, it's not going to be. And then in that case, those failures are a blessing, not a failure.
Right.
So I think that once I had to trick my mind a little bit into that, all of a sudden, this whole world opened up of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Every fear became an opportunity, because that failure meant I was closer and closer to purpose, closer and closer to my path, closer to being the strongest version of myself that's meant to do something powerful and influential in the world. So I embraced all those fears. I embraced all those failures where it could destroy others. It was empowering me. I alchemized that fear and that doubt and that worry to fuel me, to further launch me onto my path. And once I did, it was like, whew, in flow.
One of the things that just reminded me is that there's such an emotional, spiritual component to the physical work that you do. And for those of you who've not experienced a colon therapist, and I'm like, can't even talk today.
Girl, what is that we do?
I know, really. That's colon hydrotherapy. For those of you who've not experienced colon hydrotherapy, it's definitely something you need to experience. And there's a lot of fears for people around that. It's a very intimate thing that can happen. But there is definitely
particularly with colon hydrotherapy, because your colon is considered like your root chakra, and your root chakra is all about safety and security and being grounded. So everybody who walks in the door is fearful. Right. That is like you're literally confronting your fears, and then you're releasing them into the universe to be alchemized and never to be seen again. So it is actually one of the most powerful things you can do from spiritual standing as well, not just physically for your health.
Right. Well, you talk about, what are some of the ways that you want to literally rid the crap from your life, right? Things that are trapped within your body, there's so many things about things that we hold on to versus what are we letting go and letting toxins flow through. I mean, you and I have had some deep conversations, and some people will be like, what the hell are they talking about on here? But this is such an important thing, because our body, it either supports us or it doesn't. And if we're not doing the things that allow us to move toxins through our body, if we are not releasing these literally like micro traumas that can happen in our body when we have stress or we're overwhelmed or we're fearful, we hold on to these toxins in our body. And so doing things like working with a hydrotherapist, you can actually release some of these things that actually free you. Not only is it freeing within your body, but in your mind and your emotions. I've become super creative after I've done work with you, and it allows me to sleep better. And there's just so many different aspects that happen. How is it that a lot of times when people sign up for one of these sessions, they just think about, okay, I know this is good for my health, and I quote, should do this. How is it, what have you experienced not only with yourself, but your clients, in terms of some of the effects on an emotional, spiritual level of doing this kind of physical work?
So there's an evolution that happens, and this is the same with me as it is with every client. When you start with that root core of your body, right, which is like your digestive tract, you start to get grounded and you start to get clarity. You start increasing that creativity. You're releasing, like you said, trauma and toxicity that you've been storing in your body for years. One of the things you mentioned too, the brain and the gut, there's a reason why people say like, follow your gut. There's this brain gut connection that has to do with where we stand emotionally, mentally, which all of those things harmoniously connected is what allows us to be spiritually more woke, I guess you would say. So with the treatments I do, they're all very much for the physical, but as the client evolves in the process, they start to have that mental clarity and then that spiritual clarity, the emotional clarity, and it's part of their evolution. They start with that digestive tract, which is all about the root, and then they grow from there all the way up to kind of what we would call like your seventh chakra, and clear that mind and clear the spirit as well. So it is definitely an evolution that doesn't happen in like 3 or 4 sessions, but like, how that's worked over when you make it part of your lifestyle to value and to honor and take care of your body like that. It allows for all of that to open up, and you're just basically a clear channel for your path and what your intention is and plan and path is in the world. Right. So it is definitely the groundbreaking, I like to call it, like the groundbreaking level of how you're going to come into yourself, your full self.
Right. You've also talked about how fears and failures draw you closer to your purpose. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. So for me personally, my experience with fear early on was, the need of validation, or for a fear of failure, since other people have done greater things. Am I going to be good enough? And if I fail, am I not good enough? An interesting dynamic about like our kind of 3 women business. I'm in the alternative health industry. So I see a lot of things from a holistic standpoint, which is mind and body and spirit. Our bodies are vessels, I guess you would say. That was very much my grandma's forte. Like I said, she wrote the book on it, literally. My mom, the next generation came through. My mom was all about the mind, the education and the skill and that aspect of it. So once I realized that there was a missing thing, there's this third missing thing. What is it? It's the spirit. That's what makes it holistic. All of a sudden I found my place. Instead of trying to walk in somebody else's shoes, I realized I'm blessed enough to have these 3 generations, me being the third, this mind, this body, and this spirit. I had the secret missing link to this. And when I've been working with clients on that, it's broke through all those fears. It's broke through all the ideas of possible failure, because I have found my place in getting to know myself and not waiting to just be an exemplified version of somebody else, but instead really step into my own piece of my own knowing, my own path, and crush those fears, crush those failures, and accept them as, lessons, I guess. Now I embody things more as a lesson, because trials and tribulations still happen, right? Mm-hmm. But what I do now is I accept them as, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? Like because there's obviously a lesson here to be learned and something I'm meant to share. So I have to be present with those failures. I have to be present with those fears. I can't just brush them to the side and pretend like they don't exist, which is what people choose to do instead of using them, alchemizing them to become their power.
Right, right. I love how, when things are presented to you, you're definitely one of those pull the Band-Aid off kind of women, where you just like, you're presented with opportunities or things happen, you just step into it. I mean, I can remember when you and I were first working together, and I was doing a lot of things with my organizing clients, and I was, when you've got like an hour to sit and talk about all kinds of things in life when you're doing this kind of work. And we were just talking about ways that you could like organize your life and how your space would affect you. And you just like went home and just tore things apart. Right. And you were just like, okay,
Yes.
I listened to everything that you had to say. And it was just so amazing that you do that in all different aspects of your life. And I think that when you come from a place that fear, where a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know what would be the first step, but that you just move into it and that you move with it, I think it makes such a big difference. And so environments, you and I have talked about a lot, is such an important thing. And one of the things I always like to ask my guests on here is, because we do create environments, and I know that you're actually in the process of another move, but for where you are now, or the anticipation of your new place, whichever one you want to go with, is that, because we create different experiences in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our living room or office or any of those places. What's your favorite room and why?
So we're in the process of buying a new home, and we've literally moved for this reason, what you're mentioning. We've literally moved out to the country to create our space, our ideal space, the space that's not invaded by all the outside influence. And there is a little secret room that I am very excited to turn into like I call it my yoga and meditation room, but it'll probably just be my office. It's through a closet in our new house. So that I'm very excited to make into our own for sure. And then I have my office. I have my office that I call the office, but really it is my sacred space. I've created a sacred space that has all the beautiful things that I love. It has my crystals, and it has my plants, and it has my books and my cards, and it has all of the things that really embody me and make me feel powerful in my own space. And I'm excited to make that little spare, I call it this little, spare secret room, but I'm excited to make that my very sacred space. I think sacred space is so important for us when we want to just get grounded and settled again.
Right. I love that. Well, one of the things I wanted to end on here is looking at, there's different experiences in our life where we feel disempowered. And I know we talked, a lot about, the ageism aspect, with you being such a young person with so much extensive knowledge, and kind of having your age catch up with that as far as other people perception, and not letting that further disempower you, but in the ways of empowering you, and things that have really empowered you in how you're being and what you're doing. You mentioned something very unique about very interesting about the letting go of the illusion of control. Can you speak about how
that was a big lesson,
right? About how about this? What led up to that? Had you step into that, and why does that make you feel powerful?
Yeah. So leading up to it, I've always been what I call a bit of a control freak. You and I have actually talked about my control freak ways. I've always been a bit of a control freak. I think a lot of people actually have this issue, and it usually stems from a little bit of like a tumultuous childhood. Like they feel slightly like they can't fix things or they can't control things. And if I, believe to have always been a healer, I'm sure I wanted to do that very early, and those were all beyond my control. So then as you get older and older, you have this illusion that I have to control all things. Things have to go this way, especially when you have the gift of knowing. It was like a double-sided sword there, because I knew the outcomes, and I thought if I could control it in this way, the outcome would be different. And that's not how intuition works. If you have the gift of knowing, the knowing happens regardless of your action. So I spent so many years, banging my head against the wall, thinking that I was in control of all things, until one day I realized if I genuinely believe that I know best and that I am in control of all things, then I'm also accepting that when everything falls apart, that it's also my fault. Because if you can control all things, then you're also responsible for all things. And do I really want to live my life being responsible for all things? No wonder your back hurts. No wonder you're tired. You're in control of all things. The world's on your shoulders. And as soon as I realized that, I went, oh, you're so silly. You're so silly. Like, you have to accept that there is something bigger and greater than you that serves a purpose, which I already knew. And so as soon as I could release myself from my need of controlling everything and accept that all things were kind of working together as they were supposed to, the lessons were the lessons, the griefs were the griefs, the emotions were the emotions. As soon as I could process that and let that go, all of a sudden I had this breakthrough of like, now here I am. This is me who's clear. This is me who's empowered. This is me who can do the good work, because I'm not carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders anymore,
Right.
thinking that, the illusion that I was in control of all things.
Right.
So it's a work in progress, Diane.
I love it. Oh my God, you're so cute. It's definitely that. Well, and taking responsibility for ourselves, right? That's enough. We don't need to take on the world as well, right? You want to do, if we just controlled our own responsibilities and move forward, based on our own knowing, then, the world would be a much nicer place.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
easier
It really would.
right? At least that would be part of it for sure. So anyway, I so appreciate what you do. You've just been so healing to my body and myself. And I love that we've had this long-term years and years that we've worked together. And I think it's just so important for people to take care of all aspects. That really is where you find your power, is in taking care of mind, body,
agreed.
and spirit. It's all of it together. And I love that you have combined these things together. And I know that people are going to want to stay connected with you. We will have all your links and things in the show notes. But talk really quick about in your site. First, I'll have you give your site and say a little bit about your guide.
Oh yeah. So I have a amazing juicing guide, which I loved especially for people who are new to cleansing and fasting and detoxification. It's called Juicing 101. And it really helps people to really inundate themselves with a lot of nutrients. And I have that guide. It's a free PDF that I want to offer everyone, and they can find more about it on our website. My business website is livingwaterwellness.com, and the guide is available there. And then also, on social media, we're putting out tons of free content constantly, both
Perfect.
on Living Water Wellness Instagram, as well as my own personal. I do more of my spiritual coaching from my personal, which is SoCal Ciara.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And so we'll put all those things in there so you guys can stay connected to Ciara. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Oh, I love what you're doing. And I loved the idea of spa life and standing in everyone's power. And so I just appreciate you for having me be a part of your podcast and your movement.
Absolutely. Thank you for your wisdom and everything that you bring to the world. I love that you do. You're a great example of standing in your power and doing the work that you are here to do. So it's so important to do that. And I just want to thank our listeners. And we know that your most powerful aspect of your day is your time. And we appreciate you being here. I will also have in the show notes my free gift as well, the resetyourpowergift.com. So you'll have those 5 moves to stand in your power. So make sure that you grab those if you've not already done that. And make sure that you tag both Ciara and myself in here. Any questions, anything that's popped up for you in here, we're here to support. Please share and get this out because it's important to have those conversations. We've got to take care of ourselves. And when we do, we can do our bigger work in the world. So make sure you put in a comment how we can support you. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.